Look! I have Black Panther ears too! Yay! Alright, it's an Evangelion hat, but it's the only thing I own that has cat ears. That's better. Hi everybody, Carla here, and this weekend I got to see Black Panther, and unless you're like one of the 2 people in the entire world who haven't been to see that movie because it's breaking like records left and right and up and down, like it's just broken all kinds of records already, and it's only been 1 weekend, so seriously, if you haven't been to see it, what the heck are you doing with your life? Just reevaluate your life choices, please. I went to see it with my family and I really loved it. It was a great movie. It was entertaining from start to finish, and that was on top of it being so revolutionary just as a concept itself. I think this is definitely one of my favorite Marvel movies. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the best or my favorite even. I think the best probably will always be Avengers for me, just because it's kind of such a thing that I never imagined it would be. And when it comes to my favorite, that will probably be always Ant-Man, because I mean, simply because I love Ant-Man so much, and I feel such a connection to the character that I don't know, I really love Ant-Man. But it's Black Panther is definitely up there in the pantheon of MCU movies, and again, if you haven't seen it yet, you definitely should. So what I'm gonna do today is just mention a little bit of everything that I loved about Black Panther. I genuinely just had fun from start to finish. I laughed so much, like it's ridiculous how much I laughed, but it wasn't the typical, you know, jokey MCU type movie. It was like genuine laughter for something that's not a joke, for something that's just fun. So I'm gonna talk about all of that in my review. It's going to be in depth. Like, I'm going to mention things that happened in the ending and everything, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger! No, Will Robinson! Danger!
So basically, I think apart from the fact that it's the first major superhero movie that is directed by a black filmmaker and has a majority black cast, like that in itself is already a lot. Like, it's quite a milestone that Black Panther hit this weekend. But on top of that, I think the real triumph of this movie is the writing. Ryan Coogler, I know he wrote it with someone else. I don't remember the name of the other person right now, but they did one heck of a job. Because I sat there in the movie theater just thinking, wow, this is a movie that has such a big ensemble cast, and everybody matters. It's like I feel like I walked out of the theater feeling like I knew every single one of them. There was at least a little something in there for each character to define who they are. And moreover, it did that very efficiently. Like, sometimes just a line, just a couple of lines, just one scene was enough to tell me, oh, okay, I know who this person is. Not even just the main characters like T'Challa and Nakia and etc., but even the ones that were slightly less in the movie. For example, T'Challa's friend, his mother, his uncle. Like, there were very little things that Coogler and his co-writer did and added into the script that made me connect to those people, made me recognize what their motivation was. And that is something very few movies do right, because usually I'm sitting here in the movie saying, oh, it's, you know, it's okay that the main character and the main supporting character and the main antagonist those are usually the ones that are really developed, and the rest of them are just sort of in the background, you know, like supporting, but not necessarily making you connect with them, or not having an arc of their own. And I feel like in this movie everybody had an arc of their own. It was kind of amazing to see. Like, even dead people. Shell's dad had an arc, and he's dead. he wasn't alive at any point in this movie, and he had sort of his own thing to go through. Like, I really love this movie. The script, the writing for me is just the keystone of everything. This could have been just another vehicle for a superhero, like Marvel tends to do. Like, all their movies sort of focus on the hero themselves and the journey of the hero, but this one just took the time, and it did it very efficiently. It took the time to develop all the other supporting characters in a way that I don't think I've seen in Marvel movies before, or even in superhero movies before. Because, for example, most of the other movies that have supporting characters that have a wide ensemble, like a very big ensemble of characters to juggle, like for example the Avengers movies or even Civil War, you generally have the benefit of already knowing those characters. Like, Avengers had individual movies leading up to that moment, so we knew Iron Man, we knew Captain America, we knew Thor, we knew the Hulk, we knew these characters, so they didn't have to waste so much time introducing them to us. Same in Civil War. Even the new additions, like Black Panther was kind of the standout addition in Civil War, as was Spider-Man, but the others we knew, right? So that kind of thing, like, it's such a great accomplishment, because this was a huge cast of characters, most of which we'd never even met, and yet I feel like I know all of them. I feel like I like all of them. And that isn't just, it's an amazing feat. I can't even say that enough. So for me, that's the biggest thing when it comes to Black Panther, and I think that's why I liked it the best. That's the main reason why I enjoyed this movie. And then I'm gonna go into the characters, because I have so many characters to talk about, but I really have to. Let me start with the best, though, because from the moment T'Challa and his sister walk into the lab, and she turns to him and goes, "What is that?" I knew that I had fallen in love with her. By the end of this movie, I was calling it the Shuri movie in my mind. I love her so much, you guys. She is so great. She is fantastic. She stole every single scene she was in. Like, basically, it was her movie as far as I'm concerned. Shuri is the best, and I need Marvel to actually just put her in every single MCU movie from this point on, because she will make anything she's in better. I love her so much. She was fun, she was funny, she was smart, she was badass. I mean, she's a freaking scientist. She wasn't even fighting by the end. Like, she's badass, she's funny, she's smart, she can deal with people and recognize things in people that maybe others don't recognize. I love Shuri so much, you guys. She is the best addition I have seen to the MCU in a long while, and I just cannot get enough of her. Letitia, you're amazing. That's it. You need to be in every movie from now on. That's all I can say. I love her so much. Seriously, like, whenever she said something like totally nerdy, I'd be like, I am Shuri and Shuri is me. And God, I know she's supposed to be younger than me, but I have a new role model. I want to be like her when I grow up. I love her. She is fantastic. Speaking of Shuri, though, there's a post-credits scene at the end of the movie where she has some little interaction with Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. I guess that post-credits scene is supposed to set up further movies in the MCU or whatever, or especially since we're going into Infinity War and everything. I don't know. I mean, they barely even interacted at all, and I just sat there in the movie theater, which, by the way, why do people keep leaving as soon as the credits start rolling. Like, don't you know anything, people? It's a Marvel movie. Like, I can understand why you leave in Star Wars, but it's a Marvel movie. It's what they do. Anyway, I sat there with my family and I was watching, and you know, I figured it was going to be him because it was in Wakanda after all, and that's the last time we saw him and everything. But then he walks out and Shuri's there and she starts talking to him, and I'm just sitting there like, I shipped them. I shipped them. And it was really like, I have no shame, you guys. I seriously, like, my brain has no chill when it comes to shipping. It wasn't until I got back from the theater that I looked it up in Wikipedia and realized that Shuri's supposed to be 16, which now I feel kind of weird about it. Really, it's just weird. I thought she was 18, honestly. I don't mind. They can reconnect later. I don't care. I don't know, I just felt there was a chemistry there. I would like to see more of them interacting together. And, you know, if they actually make my dreams come true and have Shuri be in like a bunch of other Marvel movies, maybe she will eventually meet up with Bucky again, and who knows? I ship them, that's all I'm saying. So yeah, for me, Shuri was my favorite, but of course there was no shortage of amazing characters in this movie. Can we talk about M'Baku? Because I loved him so much. He was so great. When they're like, you have to help us, and he's like, nope. I just lost it in the theater. Like, I laughed so much with him and with Shuri. I laughed like really loudly, and I guess it's a good thing that I always sit in the back of the theater, because I feel like people would have thrown stuff at me because I was laughing so much. But I loved him. M'Baku was fantastic. I love that he came through for them in the end, even if, you know, he doesn't quite like them, but he's gonna do the right thing. I really, really like that. The ladies, just, can we talk about Nakia? Because Lupita Nyong'o is a national treasure. That woman is fantastic, and I'm so glad that she got some meteor stuff to sink her teeth into, because yeah, she was in Star Wars, but you know, she's a CGI character, and in The Last Jedi she was barely there. Like, why? That wasn't even necessary. But in this one, she was actually really, really amazing. I really loved what they did with her, because she still had that softness that you tend to associate with female characters. She wanted to help people. That's her reason. She didn't want to be a spy because she wanted to climb up the ladder or whatever, which is not a bad thing, but I like that she does these things because she wants to help people. And at the same time, she's freaking badass. Like, she's amazing. But she's not a soldier either. She is trying more to help with her abilities than just defend. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't love Wakanda, or that she doesn't feel the same level of respect and love for her country as, say, the Dora Milaje feel. But I like the twist they gave her. I like that she obviously loved T'Challa, and she says as much. She really loves him, but she wasn't going to just be a queen and like sit there and be arm candy for him. She wanted to help people, and that's why she wasn't staying. That's why she didn't think she should stay. She should go out into the world and try to do what her heart was telling her to do, and follow her calling to help people. And I thought that was amazing. That scene she had with Okoye, can we talk about that scene where Okoye is like, they have such different points of view, but they both love Wakanda so much in their own ways. And that for me, that was the best scene in the movie. That when they're arguing after T'Challa supposedly dies, I love that she's like, I will not stay and serve my country. I'm going to save my country. And it goes to show that there's no right or wrong in the way that you love your country, because Okoye wasn't wrong and Nakia wasn't wrong. They were just coming at it from two different perspectives, and both are okay and both are really strong. That's one of the things the writing did so well too, is writing really strong female characters. And I don't just mean fighting. I don't just mean kicking ass. I mean strong in their motivation, strong in the arc they go through, strong in their desires, and even when they're maybe in the wrong, they stick to it and they keep going until they come to a resolution for their own arc. And I think that's lovely for them. Okuya was amazing. Like, guys, that scene where she just throws her wig at the dude. Like, that's the best scene ever. Like, I loved it so much. Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa was fantastic, but I think I liked him a bit more in Civil War, just because I feel he had a bit more of an emotional impact in that one. In this one, I didn't really start going, wow, okay, Chadwick Boseman is good, until maybe later on, like when he starts figuring out Eric's deal, you know? That's kind of when I started going, okay, this dude is good. But I think I liked his arc better in Civil War for some reason. But he was still great. I really enjoyed it. And then, of course, there's the older supporting characters like Angela Bassett and Forrest Whitaker, whom I really enjoyed. I wish they had been given a little bit more to do, I guess. But I still like that there was a point to them even then. Like, Forrest Whitaker's character was actually there to see what happened with Eric's father and to explain it to T'Challa. And of course, Angela Bassett's character was sort of the keeper of the ceremony when they needed her, because of course Eric kills everybody who knows how to use the flower. So when Shuri and the Queen Mother and Nakia run off to the mountains and then they find T'Challa again, Angela Bassett's character is the one that can actually, that has the knowledge of how to use the flower in order to bring T'Challa back. So I think I like that they had a point. I just wish we had seen a little bit more of them. Like, did she actually know what her husband did to his brother? I don't think that was ever clear. But what was there was fantastic. I love them. And then of course we get to another favorite of mine. I love Martin Freeman. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. I was so glad to see him join the MCU as Everett Ross, and I loved him even more in this movie because in Civil War he was kind of smarmy. Like, he's just this random CIA agent that's basically just doing the job and that's it. But in this one we got to see a little bit more heart to him, and I really liked that. I thought the scene when he's piloting the simulation and he just, like, he's being attacked, the building he's in is being attacked, and he still stays because he realizes that even though, you know, these people butted into his mission, and even though these people have been hiding this technology from the entire world for centuries probably, he knows that there's a real danger in letting this stuff out into the world willy-nilly, and that it should be their decision if they want to share it, because it is theirs. They're not supposed to, you know, the US and other colonist nations are not supposed to just take away resources from the countries they colonize. And Wakanda isn't colonized, but he understands that it's sort of the same principle. So it's not up to the United States to decide when Wakandan technology has to go out into the world. It should be on Wakandans. And that's why he decides to stay and help and try to take those ships down so that it's basically not contraband, and it's not like Wakanda is outed without them accepting it to be like that. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like he learned a good lesson in this movie, which we didn't see much of in Civil War. So I really enjoyed it. Andy Serkis as Claw was just funny. I love Andy Serkis. He's fantastic. Made me laugh, and I wasn't expecting him to die like that, so that was a shock for me. But I really liked him as well. And then we get to, of course, Michael B. Jordan as Eric, or Killmonger, or however you want to call him, and Jadaka, or whatever. He was great. Like, at the beginning, I wasn't entirely sure that they were going to develop him as much as they ended up doing. When he finally gets to Wakanda, though, that's when everything starts, like, ramping up for him. And he is such a good character. I've seen tons and tons of tweets and social media posts already hailing him as the best MCU villain. I'm not sure I would go that far yet, because I really feel like people sleep on Zemo. Zemo was really great, and I will say this until the day I die, you guys. I think Zemo was really great, and in fact, while I was in the theater watching Black Panther, I sat there thinking, wow, Eric is actually very similar to Zemo. They had a lot of similarities going through. One of the heroes killed their family, and now they're on a plot of revenge to destroy that hero in particular. Of course, there was a bit more to Eric in that sense, and I feel people don't get the same emotional connection with Zemo simply because Daniel Brühl is German and is a little bit more stoic. And with Zemo, the reveal that he was actually engineering everything in the movie only came out like way toward the end. I think we had a little bit more time with Eric to process that, yeah, he's the big bad, and he is this well connected to the entire storyline and to T'Challa in particular. With Zemo, we didn't have that until the very end. It wasn't revealed that Zemo had connections to the Avengers, or to Tony Stark at least, until the very end. So I feel like people don't react to Zemo as emotionally as they do to Eric. But for me, the two of them were actually very similar. And Zemo won! Zemo got what he wanted. Yeah, he ended up in prison, but he won, dude. He split up the Avengers. This is like big freaking deal, you know? And Eric came pretty freaking close, and part of it actually he did get, which was the part of Wakanda opening its borders. He just obviously didn't get the part where Wakanda then took control over the world, but you know, it's just, for me, I feel like Zemo and Killmonger are like right there. I know people are gonna say Loki. I don't really care for Loki. I mean, he was good in the first Thor movie. I enjoyed it. I don't know, I've never been attached to Loki particularly. I much rather prefer Zemo. I like Yellow Jacket too, but I guess he wasn't as well developed as these two. I really do think that Zemo and Killmonger are like right there when it comes to MCU villains. So I'm not ready to say that he is the number one MCU villain yet. I will take some time to process that. I think the fact that Zemo won sort of puts him like a little step ahead for me personally, but still, Eric was so great, and I loved the way that he sort of exemplified this pain and this anger and this resentment that is very valid, that the entire community, the entire African American community in the United States has. Eric was saying things that I never thought I would hear said in a wide appeal MCU superhero movie. I never thought those things would ever be said. And that is revolutionary, you guys. And they need to be said. I just never thought they would. Because he's right about a lot of stuff. I walked out of the theater and I was telling my friends, you know what? He had a good point. You know, like, he was still a psycho who wanted to take over the world in the worst possible way just for revenge. But he had a good point. Yeah, you know? So if you think about it, you can understand where he was coming from. A lot of people feel like he feels. And I think it's great that those people are seeing themselves represented on screen for the first time in a mainstream superhero movie. And Michael B. Jordan is just... he's electric. Like, every time he's on screen, you just have to stare at him. Because he's so amazing. And he's got such a charm, such a personality. Like, seriously, now he's in the new, like, DirecTV streaming service ads. And every time it comes up on my TV, I'm just like, I should switch to DirecTV. even though I hate DirecTV. But it's just the fact that Michael B. Jordan is trying to sell it to me, so now I'm like, I must buy this. Every time he does that. And he does it in Black Panther, and he is so amazing. So incredible. Like, it just really freaking sucks that he's dead. I normally don't advocate for bringing people back from the dead, but I would buy Killmonger coming back, like, somehow. I don't know. Like, he was such a great character. Such a great character. I mean, just from the moment when you first meet him at the museum, you're like... I remember having a second when I realized, oh, he's working for Claw. And I was a little bit disappointed. I was like, I didn't want him to be a toady. I wanted him to be the boss. And then he kills Claw, and I'm like, yes! But, yeah, I think he's so great, and they did such a great job with him, honestly. And even the minor characters, like T'Challa's dad and T'Challa's uncle, like, seriously, I jumped out of my seat when I saw Sterling K. Brown. Like, who assembled this cast? It's ridiculous how talented this cast is. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing. The cast is definitely the strongest part of this movie, and I loved it. You know, it's one of those things where I don't really have many complaints about this movie. I think this is probably the superhero movie that I have the least complaints about. Music was great. I mean, it fit. It's not my type of music, but it fit the movie, certainly. And it was a lot more emotional than I expected. Honestly, when I heard, like, Kendrick Lamar is doing the soundtrack, I was like, I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting everything to sound a lot alike. But it worked. It really did work. But I do have a couple complaints, even though this movie is sort of the MCU movie that I have the least complaints about. Like, I feel like everything that was there on screen was pretty much perfect. Like, there's not one scene that I can think of that I would go, like, maybe this shouldn't have been there, or they should have done this better. Maybe it's just that I have only watched it once, but I don't feel like there's anything in the movie that I would take out or change or anything. I would say my main complaint is that the CGI was pretty rubbery in a lot of it. I know my brother was complaining about the scene at the end with T'Challa and Killmonger fighting each other in the train and stuff, and it looked pretty bad, but I was actually already had that in my mind, the CGI thing, from earlier on. Like, there were a bunch of scenes in Seoul, for example, they were in South Korea, that also looked a bit rubbery to me, for some reason. So I wish they had done better in the CGI. I also, like, a lot of stuff like falling and T'Challa jumping over stuff and, you know, hanging onto buildings like Spider-Man, and I was like, thank God I did not watch this in 3D. I would have gotten sick. I'm just saying, like, I already don't like 3D. I don't think this is a movie that I could have ever watched in 3D. But the CGI could use more work, and it's funny because there's a scene where he jumps from the top of the car and the car goes tumbling, and that scene was in the trailer, in the first trailer. That scene was in there. And immediately I went, that CGI was a bit too much for me. I hope they fix it. I don't think they fixed it. So yeah, the CGI definitely stood out to me. Maybe work on that a little bit. But it wasn't enough to take me out of the movie for any reason. I think the only, like, real complaint that I have about this movie is that while everything that was in it I thought was pretty damn perfect, I wish it had gone a little farther. And this is gonna get a little philosophical, and I hope that I can explain this well so that nobody sort of misunderstands me, because I think it's a very delicate topic. So I'm gonna this is probably gonna take the longest part in this video. I'm just gonna go and explain what I'm trying to say. Hopefully you'll understand it. I'm Latin American, right? I was born in Latin America, I was raised in Latin America, I lived most of my life in Latin America. But I have had the chance, when I was doing my undergrad, to live in the United States. I also had the chance to live in Berlin when I was doing my master's, but in this specific rant, I want to focus more on my life in the United States. And there's this one funny thing that people in the United States do, because the United States is one of those places where everybody's like, oh, we're the land of immigrants and whatever. It's like anybody who's not Native American had to come in from somewhere, right? So a lot of people are very aware of sort of like their ancestral roots, I guess. And I get it, like Panama is also like that. I live in Panama, and Panama is tiny, it's in the middle of the continent, and there's a lot of traveling through Panama to get to other places. So we've always been sort of a crossroads where a lot of cultures meet. So it's a place where you see all kinds of people. This is normal. It's not a big deal to us anymore. So it's not a big deal. We have people of all races, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, all sorts of stuff. And most people in Panama actually just declare themselves as mixed race, because like I think it's like 70% people declare themselves mixed race, because there's just no way to know. Like all these cultures have been here for such a long time that you don't really know who your ancestors are, which is very similar to the way the United States does it. But there's this funny thing that people in the United States do. Like I would talk to a Hispanic person and be like, hi, I'm from Panama, and they'd be like, oh, that's cool, I'm Hispanic to a Mexican. And I'm like, no, you're not. Or people would come up on St. Patrick's Day like, hi, I'm Irish, and I'm like, no, you're not. Or I'm Italian, or I'm, I don't know, Nigerian, and I'm like, no, you're not. You're from the United States. That's who you are. That's where you're from, you know? And it's like people have this attachment to their ancestral roots. And I get it. My family's also like that as well, not with every single ethnicity that we have in our veins, but my mother's side of the family, for example, came from France, and we actually know our most recent French ancestor in a way. It's like, I think it's like a great-great-grandfather. We have his documents, we know who he married, who his kids were, etc., like why he came and everything. So we've always felt a strong attachment to the French, even though, you know, I probably also have like Spanish and Native American, because everybody in this country is freaking mixed, so of course I have a little bit of everything. But we do feel that kind of strong connection to our French side of the family. You will see, like, when the World Cup, the soccer World Cup starts in the summer, I'll be like wearing France team jerseys and shit, and rooting for them to win and stuff like that. Like, I get it. I get being proud of your ancestry, and it was one of our dreams to go to France when we went to Paris. Like, I could have cried. Like, it was a dream of my entire life, that I've had my entire life, to go to France, and it was amazing. But I would never go to France and like stand there and be like, hello, my fellow Frenchmen. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not French. I have French ancestry, which is great, and it's cool and I love it, but I'm not French. I'm Panamanian. That's who I am. And in the United States, that's not a thing. It might be because they don't have like a demonym of their own. Like, you can't say United Statesian, and American's kind of so general, I guess, for them. I don't generally use American either, because the way we are taught the continents is different, so it's confusing. I always find it funny that people are like, I'm Mexican, I'm Italian, I'm Polish, and I'm like, no, you're not, you're American. That's who you are. That's it. So in a sense, I think there's a real danger in sort of mushing together the two experiences. Like, I will never be French, and I'm probably different from the rest of the Panamanian people because I have French ancestry, which is not very common down here. But even then, like, the two experiences are not different. I can't say, oh, I'm French Panamanian, and then be like, I'm French. You can't mush the two together. The experiences of someone growing born and raised here in Panama are completely different than the experiences of someone born and raised in France. Similarly, with people in the United States, you can't say that someone born and raised in the United States is Mexican because they're not. They may look the same, but their experiences, their life experiences, are completely the same. They are completely different, sorry. So, that's one thing. The other thing is that, for example, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's a Disney Channel show. It's a cartoon, so for little kids. It's called Elena of Avalor. And when it came out a couple of years ago, it was being billed as the first Hispanic Disney princess. And I was like, yay! I mean, everybody made a very big deal out of it, and I think it was a big deal. I like that there's a Hispanic Disney princess, because I feel like Hispanic girls would like to see ourselves represented in the Disney princess pantheon. There hasn't been one so far, so it's a good thing overall. But at the same time, I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, but Avalor is not a real country. You know what I mean? It's like, in essence, you're taking Hispanic people and mushing them all together into one very fraught with stereotypes concept, I guess. Which, again, it's not bad. I like that they're at least giving some visibility to Hispanic people. I just wish they had actually made it about Hispanic people and not just made up their own Hispanic country with a bunch of cultures that aren't really specific to any one country. So in the end, people end up thinking of Elena as the stereotype of Hispanic girls, when really, if you come to a Hispanic country, we're nothing like that, you know? So in a way, it's a little bit weird to me. There's that duality, the desire for representation that I have versus the way that representation is depicted on screen. And based on these two concepts that I've told you, those are kind of the two problems that I have with the movie, but not the movie itself. Just I wish there had been more to it in that way. Like, I feel that Black Panther was a movie made for African American audiences, which is great. Again, I love that there's an entire group of people that are seeing themselves represented on screen for the first time, and they're seeing their culture and their grievances aired out in screen for everybody to see, even people who are of different races and ethnicities and origins and cultures. They're all seeing that life experience of Black and African American people in the United States. That's great. I had hoped that because Wakanda is an African country, that we would have gotten a little bit more of the experience of African people in actual Africa. I don't know if I'm making sense in that way, but what I'm trying to say is that because the main ideologue in the movie was Killmonger and he was from the United States, he definitely, that ideology, you could see it throughout the movie. And while Wakanda was meant to represent an African country, and I think it's great that we get to see the more cultural, ceremonial, mystical side to Africa, because it's important that in the past people have had this idea that African culture and African customs should be like overlooked, you know, because of colonialism. A lot of that got pushed down and treated as, you know, inferior. And it's good that now we have a movie like this which is celebrating African culture and how colorful it is, how vibrant it is, how joyful it is. I just wish we had seen a little bit more of the real Africa in a way, and I don't feel like we did. And that's why I feel like this is a movie that was crafted for American audiences, for audiences in the United States. But I wonder if people watching this in actual Africa feel themselves as represented as the African Americans do, for example. Like, I know it's always cool to see Black people on screen on a majorly Black cast with in a movie directed by a black director is always great because you don't see that as far as color of the skin goes. But the life experiences shown in the movie aren't necessarily what African people would want to see, I would guess. Like, I imagine they're looking at this movie and thinking, oh, great, it's great for the Americans, but it doesn't necessarily reflect what's happening in Africa, which I thought I was hoping for, since Wakanda is an African country. So I wish we could have seen, I mean, obviously this is not to diminish the African American experience, because again, it's a group that has been incredibly maligned over the centuries, and they have a right to celebrate their culture and see it on screen. But when I think about it, like at the end, for example, when Wakanda decides to open its doors and T'Challa takes Shuri to Oakland, it's like, here, we're going to open our first outreach center here in Oakland so that all the little African American kids who are struggling in these neighborhoods have something to help them, which is super, super great. Like, I wish it were real like that. And certainly they deserve that kind of acknowledgement, that the African American youth is at risk and they should get every opportunity they can, because they deserve it, damn it. They've been mistreated for so long. Let's help them now. But at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, well, okay, it's a worthwhile goal, but you're from an African country. What about the little kids in Rwanda who are in the middle of a civil war? What about the kids in Sierra Leone who just went through the worst Ebola epidemic in history just a few years ago? What about the kids in Somalia who have been going through famine since I can remember? What about the kids in Chad who are going through religious persecution? What about them? We didn't see enough of them. And I wish we had. I understand that, it's a movie, you have a limited time frame and you can't fit everything in there. But we did have that one scene at the beginning with Nakia, which was one of my favorite scenes, to be honest, when she was in her mission and T'Challa very rudely pulled her out of it, by the way. I'm kidding, they were cute. But she was in a mission that was, it was pretty obvious it had something to do with human trafficking or illegal migration of some kind. They obviously never said it because this is still Disney, but it was pretty obvious that's what it was, and there was no resolution for that. So, like, you get Killmonger's story, starts in Oakland, and it circles back to Oakland. We never saw the circle back to Africa, and that kind of disappointed me a little bit, because I wanted African people to also see themselves and be like, here, we can help ourselves. We have people supporting us, and we have good things in Africa that deserve to be shown on screen, but we also have a different experience that African descended people in America do, in the United States do. African American experience and the African experience, they're not the same. They can't be mushed together. So I had been hoping that because Wakanda is in Africa, that we would get to see a little bit more of the African point of view on it. And we didn't really. And Wakanda ended up being a little bit like Avalor in that sense, in the sense that it's kind of a little bit of a stereotype. It's not a bad stereotype, just like with Avalor. It's good that there's visibility of African culture because it has been so pushed down in the past, and it's good that we're now at a point where we can celebrate it and it's not taken as inferior. I just wish we had seen a bit more of the day-to-day Africa, the day-to-day Wakanda. Like, we saw a lot of high government with T'Challa and his council, and we saw a lot of the ceremonial part of it with everybody, M'Baku was dressed in furs the entire time, that kind of thing. The ceremonial dresses and the drumming and the fighting. We saw a lot of that. I wish we had seen more of, like, the regular people in Wakanda who are not, like, leaders of a tribe. We saw a little bit of it when T'Challa and Nakia were talking in the street. It happened twice, at the beginning and one at the end. And we saw a lot of the landscape of the city. Wakanda was a huge city. It was a developed city. It looked like a ton of people lived there, and we only saw one street. What about all the other people who live in Wakanda? The people who just go to work every day and go to school every day and sell their stuff on the street and make business deals and just play along with their friends. And that's the Africa I wanted to see, the Africa that is just like every other place on Earth. You know what I mean? My city could be any other city in the world, really. We do have like a part where we have like skyscrapers and shit, but we also have the regular part of town where regular people live and go to work and do their stuff and get stuck in traffic, and you know, we have all that stuff. Wakanda should have it too, because Africa has it too. And it's all too easy, I feel, for people who are outside of Africa who to just think of Africa as either the place with the ceremonial drumming and fire dancing and whatever it was that you imagine that Africa is, and on the other side, and this is for a certain someone who's never going to watch this, but he knows who he is, another side who people assume is just people living in huts and wearing loincloths, which is not what Africa is at all. Sure, there's a little bit of that in tribes that are more rural in a sense, but Africa is a large community of people living in cities and just commuting and building and just interacting together all the time. And I wish we had seen a little bit more of that Africa and spent a little less time in the ceremony of it all. Not that the ceremony is bad, again, it's good that it's being exalted because it didn't used to be that way. But I wish we had seen a little bit more of regular Africa, so that people can have this idea, can learn this idea that Africa is a nice place. It's a good place with lots of different people in lots of different conditions, and that you should not stereotype them one way or the other. And I feel like when I was sitting there and thinking back on a movie that I loved, I feel like that was my biggest disappointment. But again, it's not that there was anything wrong with the movie. It was worthwhile for the movie to explore the African American experience in life. But as someone who lives outside the United States and who usually can sort of parse this idea of when things are US-centric, I felt like this movie was very US-centric, despite the fact that the majority of it took place in Africa. And I just wish we had seen a little bit more of that, because Africa deserves that. I understand that this movie is a huge deal for African Americans, but it could have been a bigger deal as well for African people. And it was in a certain way, because again, they get to see people who look like them on screen being superheroes and kicking ass and being amazing and saving themselves, and it's great for them. I just wish the entire life experience had been encompassed in the movie a little bit better. But I understand, you know, that Wakanda is supposed to be this idealized place where colonialism never took part. So in a sense, it's not so much Avalor as it is, you know, utopia in a way. And that's great. It's great that we can sort of have that sort of escapism. I just wish we had seen a little bit more of actual Africa. Like, what happened to the people that Nakia rescued, for example? What happened to them? I wish we could have come full circle to that, and we didn't, and kind of made me sad a little bit. But the movie itself was amazing. My complaints are minimal, unlike with other Marvel movies where I do have some complaints. I really thoroughly enjoyed myself with this one. I don't think there's anything I would change, honestly, except for the CGI, but that's kind of its own thing, I guess. If you have a cast this good, I can give you a pass on the CGI, because the cast and the characters and the writing were just excellent, and I loved it from start to finish. It's definitely one of the best MCU movies to date, and I hope, now that it's broken like every other record in the world, I hope that Hollywood sees that you can have movies like this that are directed by a person of color, that have a cast comprised mainly of people of color, and that tells stories of people of color, and that dares to deal with social issues and racial issues and really timely issues like what do you do with refugees, and should we be talking about isolationism, and is that good or bad for us and for the rest of the world. And I think this was such a deep movie that I'm just really happy for people who are seeing themselves in T'Challa, in Nakia, in everybody in this movie. I'm definitely seeing myself in Shuri a lot, so I get you, even though I'm, but but I think there's a little bit in all of these characters for all of us to identify with, and it's especially important for people of color because there's no comparison to this. It's like, yeah, Blade, whatever, but we've never seen anything like this, and I hope it changes the world. I hope it has that Wonder Woman sort of aspect to it, where we take that old idea we had that women and people of color can't sell, and that we throw it onto the trash already because it's obviously fake, it's obviously baseless, and Black Panther just proves it even more than Wonder Woman did, because this movie was just such a blast. So fantastic, and it deserves every single penny it's getting because it's so good. I can't wait to see all these characters back for a sequel, probably. Please, Marvel, hear my prayer and have Shuri be in every Marvel movie from now on, because she can only make them better. And that's it from me today, I guess. Tell me what you thought about Black Panther, who your favorite characters were, if you have any complaints, however minor they might be. Tell me what you felt watching this movie. Does it represent your experience if you're a person of color, for example? So go into the comments and tell me that. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like my stuff, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always happy to see people liking and viewing and sharing and subscribing. It really does make me feel really happy, so please keep on doing that. And if you have any suggestions for any topics that you'd like me to talk about in the future, if it's anything that I know anything about, if it's anything I'm knowledgeable about, please drop it in the comments and I will make sure to add it to my list of videos to make in the future. In the meantime, you can find me on social media. I am on Twitter and Instagram at girlsareweird with underscores between the words, and I am on Tumblr at girlsareweird with hyphens between the words. You can find a Facebook page for this vlog at facebook.com/FreakingNarnia. And as usual, be sure to visit my main website at FreakingNarnia.com. All my videos are up there in case you missed anything. You can just go in there and catch up. I also do have a new section on my website, which is at FreakingNarnia.com/proofing, where I do proofreading. It's kind of my job. So I built this little section on my website in case anybody out there needs any sort of proofreading. Go in there and maybe we can work together on making your stuff a little bit better so that it can see the light of day without any mistakes. I also have a Redbubble store, so be sure to check that out. I make art based on my favorite quotes from my favorite fandoms, and then you can use that art to print on different merchandise such as t-shirts, coffee cups, computer covers, all sorts of stuff. So be sure to visit and maybe purchase something if you're in the mood. It really does help me a lot. And that's about it from me today. I will see you guys next week with another video from all the way in freaking Narnia. I don't know what it's gonna be about, but it probably won't be cooler than Black Panther, so see you guys. Okay, it's an Evangelion hat. Okay, it's an Evangelion hat, but it's the only thing I know that has cat ears. We're actually very similar. When I realized, oh, he's walking, it's like, yeah, Shaft, whatever. Throw it out the trash. FreakingNarnia.com/